Well, welcome to Shop Talk Live. Today, we're focusing on Southeast Asia, and it's a great pleasure to welcome my co-host today, Sin Hin Wong. Sin Hin, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Well, we've spoken a lot, but it's nice to actually co-host an episode on a region you know so much about. You're GM and VP Sales for Asia Pacific for PDI. You know the region inside out.
Well, I wouldn't say I know the region inside out, Dan, but I do know a little bit. Hopefully, I'll be adding value throughout the whole conversations, and really exciting to be able to co-host this, segment with you today. So,
well, I've been looking forward to it. So it's a great pleasure. Now, just setting the context that we're talking about today, and we'll be welcoming our guests on in a few minutes, but one of the sort of, I guess, the context is that energy companies across the region are really focusing on the consumer, aren't they, and developing their convenience offer. This is something which is a major trend in the region across Asia, but also we're looking at Southeast Asia today. And I think that this is in a conversation as we're preparing for this, you were telling me that we've seen a shift in recent years from a conceptual discussion around the digital transformation to the actual actuation of those digital strategies, a great increase in mobile delivery, ordering, digital payment, and also an increasing focus on e-mobility, which obviously we've been covering a lot in Shop Talk Live in other regions. So it's a big shift going on, Sin Hin.
Yeah, Dan, I thought it's very interesting, if you kind of look at the evolutions of what I call the digital transformation journey, right, in Southeast Asia, literally. It's a buzzword that has been around for over a decade now, right? If you kind of look at, 10 years ago, when people talk about digital journey, it's all about O2O, right? Like, what do you do? Kind of bring your business online, and bring the consumers into your physical stores, right? Then pre-COVID, it was all about consumer touch points, creating that omni-channel, and it kind of like allow you to have that digital presence. But when COVID hit, it literally changes the whole landscape, right? To the point that you kind of brought up earlier on. Literally, it reshaped the thinking that a lot of retailers are looking at what it really means when they talk about digital transformation. It's not just about the journey, but it's about the radical transformation of their business model. Shifting away, looking at what they need to do with a business, but more about fulfilling the consumer needs, what their brand promise are bringing to the consumers. And they kind of explain, the whole acceleration and change in mindset and the digital blueprint that we talk about back in pre-COVID and during the COVID and to where it is today. And that also explains why we're seeing an acceleration of where businesses are now basically said, I really got to be online, but it's not just about being online, but it's how do I actually unify the data, creating a seamless consumer's experience, but more importantly, focusing on my consumer needs to drive that exceptional customer's experience. And I think that's where we are right now. And that's what is really driving a lot of the thinking and the strategy moving forward for the retailers in Southeast Asia.
That makes a lot of sense. And just a question on Southeast Asia, where we're focusing today, as opposed to your region, Asia Pacific region that you cover. How does Southeast Asia differ, if you like, from is it very much on the same pathway as the rest of Asia, or are there some differences?
Well, so first thing first, Asia is a very fragmented market, especially when you talk about, Asia Pacific, Asia, and even Southeast Asia itself is very fragmented in that sense, simply because different culture, languages, and the way how, the businesses conduct and engage the consumers at a local level. Yeah. But and we have definitely seen that whole diversities in this part of the world. But you guess what? A common theme that we saw when COVID hit, literally, business were in standstill, and overnight there were a common engagement and the way how retailers actually work with their consumers. So definitely, I think it will be very interesting to hear, the perspective from one of our guests from Malaysia, obviously, to talk about, the view and the digital journey that they have, and how they differ from another experience that we will be sharing with another guest, from the Philippines. So I'll leave it with you to do the introduction, but I just want to kind of make sure that we kind of lay out that perspective from our region.
Very, very good. And let me do that. So just to explain the rest of the program, we have next on, and I'll introduce them in a minute, we have BHPetrol from Malaysia. After that, we go to Northern Star from the Philippines. So we're going from the Malaysian market to the Philippines. And then towards the end of the program, we'll be inviting on Mark Wohltman, who's Global Director at NACS, to talk about some of the activities that NACS are, I think, really delivering with for the industry in the region as well. So that's the program. Why don't we start with Malaysia, Sin Hin, and let me welcome Mohammed Agos bin Abdul Hasan Ashari, who's the Senior Manager for Digital Transformation at BHPetrol in Malaysia. Welcome.
Hi, Dan. Good evening. Hi, Sin Hin. Thanks for having me on
the show.
Agos. Good to see you. Good to see you. Definitely.
Good to meet you. Perhaps we could start off. You've heard our discussion, Agos, about the region. Perhaps you could give us a little bit of background on BHPetrol as a company in terms of the size of your network, the scale that you have, and the background to the market.
Sure. So Boosted Petroleum Marketing Sdn Bhd, or better known as BHPetrol, was actually established sometime about February 2006. It was an offshoot after British Petroleum actually exited Malaysia, and then the network was then bought over by Boosted Sdn Bhd, which then renamed the whole network as Boosted Petroleum Marketing. Since then, we've grown to about 400 retail service stations located throughout Peninsular Malaysia. So we provide top quality products, services to millions of customers every year. And on top of that, we also operate about 300 convenience retailing stores, which we call BHPetrol Mart, which we aim to provide further convenience to our customers in Peninsular Malaysia. One thing very interesting to note is that Boosted Petroleum is actually a nation government investment linked company, or a GLC. So it's a subsidiary under the Malaysian Armed Forces Fund Board, or the Army's pension fund. So it's very active in the market, and we continue to try to expand and strengthen our network for the benefit of our pensioners of the armed forces.
Absolutely. And an exciting market, Malaysia, Sin Hin.
Yes, Malaysia is definitely a very exciting market. To be honest with you, Dan, I mean, obviously it's one of the market where you see a good mix of, international oil retailers as well as national oil, who are actually growing and expanding exponentially, right? I mean, and you're definitely seeing a shift, as what Agos was sharing earlier on. Historically, there has always been the focus on looking at fuel sales. And now, with the national oil companies leading the charge, there's a lot of big shift moving towards, the non-fuel sales, obviously headed by, companies like, Petronas, for example, followed by Petron. And obviously not forgetting about, BHPetrol as some of the examples that, I was quoting. And then obviously you have Shell being a major player, as well as Caltex and Exxon, in the local market. So
yeah, absolutely, very interesting. So competitive market dynamic in Malaysia. Just what's the structure of the fuels market, if I can ask you a little bit about the background for that, Agos?
Sure, Dan. I think that's a very important point to note. I think just before that, you were talking to Sin Hin about the very unique differences in Asia Pacific and Southeast Asia. And within Southeast Asia, Malaysia, just to give you a flavor of how different the market is that Malaysia is a very highly regulated market where we have a regulated fuel pricing. So the government actually determines what's the fuel price to be sold to the customer. And this actually started way back, I think in 1983, just after the Iranian Revolution. And I think all the national oil codes started to, the nations with national oil codes started to introduce very strict regulations in terms of selling fuel. So similarly, Malaysia also started to introduce the regulated fuel market, regulated fuel pricing based on a automated pricing mechanism. That actually helps to, cushion the effect of the fuel price to the people in the country, so that the retail prices for the fuel maintains at a lower price, and it also keeps the market very competitive for all the oil companies. So what that means for the typical oil company in Malaysia compared to the other oil companies in the region, we've always not just focused on selling fuel, but convenience retailing or the shop sales have also been quite a big part of the offering for the customers. So that is, I think, one of the unique traits of the Malaysian fuel market.
Well, that makes sense, and obviously fits in with wider trends that are happening to the industry anyway, globally. You know, that focus on convenience, and I know a lot of what we're talking about today is going to be looking at, you know, the convenience opportunity and how businesses in Southeast Asia are really targeting that. We talked, Argos, we talked a little bit about digital transformation. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that transformation from your point of view.
Sure. So I think digital transformation means many different things to different oil costs, to different players. For example, for the regulatory bodies, for the ministry, digital transformation means moving to non-traditional ways of helping the citizens of the country. So what's interesting enough is recently Malaysia has announced that they are going to implement a targeted subsidy scheme for the various levels of society in Malaysia. So we have the 3 tiers currently in Malaysia, depending on the level of income. And the ministry has announced that they are going to implement a targeted subsidy scheme using the e-wallets. So this is a digital transformation in terms of the regulatory bodies looking at other ways, other unique ways to help the citizens using the latest technology. And this has also spurred digital transformation across the oil coast, trying to meet that expectations, not only from the consumers, but also from the government.
Well, that's pretty interesting, because obviously across the world, you know, and I'm obviously looking at things from a European perspective in terms of the, you know, the difficulty that drivers have to afford fuel prices at the pump. I guess one of the problems that government has here is that anything they have to do has to be a very blunt instrument in terms of lowering the prices for everybody, as opposed to targeted schemes. So I guess, you know, Sin Hin, you correct me if I'm wrong about this, but one of the advantages that Asia has is that, you know, with digitalization being quite developed, it might be more possible to target consumer groups that you know, that need more support, because obviously it's a big issue globally right now.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you know, Dan, if you kind of look at Malaysia market, slightly different from some other market in Southeast Asia, as what Argos was saying, it has always been a market that is subsidized by the government to a certain extent, right? Depending on the goods and services that being used by, you know, the different group of, you know, the society, right? Simply because Malaysia still today is very much a developing nation, right? And the government obviously has been, you know, since independence, has been working very hard to try to, you know, leverage and bring, you know, the same level of income, right, equality across the board. And as you know, as a big nation, it has never always been easy. So what I've seen has been an interesting bit is how the whole process has moved from, you know, a very mundane way of doing it to the way leveraging digital to achieve the better results. And obviously now, instead of giving subsidy to a wider group of people within the community, it now becomes a lot easier because of the digital, you know, technologies and leverage that the government has. Now it can become more targeted and more, you know, focused on offering the subsidies to the right level of community. So I think that's exactly where the government is heading towards, as per what Argos was describing. So
Well, I mean, I think this is actually a really, really big point. I'm just delighted that we found out about that. Looking more broadly at the digital transformation, what else are BHPetrol doing in terms of accelerating and implementing Argos?
Yeah, we're currently looking at really revamping our digital strategy across the board, not just fuels retailing and convenience retailing, but also how we do business generally. And I think this is a trend that is, for some reason, all of the oil companies are actually doing at the same time. So it's a very exciting time for Malaysia right now, where Shell, Petronas, BHPetrol, Petron, even Chevron are embarking on this digital journey. I think it all comes back down to the basics of retailing, which is information, productivity, and control of that information and productivity. So that is, I think, a key theme that we see in the digital transformation journey across the oil companies, where the key theme is getting the right information at the right time and being able to utilize it for productivity at a much lower cost. And I think the reason why all the companies are going through this journey at the same time is, I think everyone has come to the realization that if we don't reinvent ourselves, we'll not stay relevant.
No, absolutely. So I guess, you know, and two of the big conclusions we've already mentioned in our discussion about that is really looking beyond fuel as the profit center, and focusing on the store. And obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about EV energy transition as well, which I think is a particularly interesting story in Asia. But in terms of looking at the store as a profit center, the focus is very much on that in BHPetrol now.
Yes, that is the focus in BHPetrol as well as the other companies, especially with this targeted subsidy scheme that was recently announced by the Ministry of Finance. Partnerships are now much more important for the oil co-players. Usually, oil cos previously would just be focusing on their own brand, for example, Shell with the Select, Petronas with the Mesra, BHPetrol, the BHPetrol Max. But now partnerships are the norm, partnering with maybe more non-traditional players like online shopping, such as Lazada, Shopee, taking it into a more international scope, maybe Amazon, eBay, and then moving that into e-wallets, trying to get into that very impulse buying scenarios where customers get promotions as and when they drive into the forecourt, and these e-wallets actually push them with these push notifications saying that what's the latest and greatest from the BHPetrol or Petronas or Shell. And interesting enough, when you talk about EV mobility, that is also one of the things that partnering with other non-traditional industries is very important, because EV still takes quite a long time to charge. It's not your typical fuel up using fuel. You will need to capture the attention of the customer while they're fueling and entice them to come to a certain brand by providing them services that will actually occupy the time. So that's now looking more towards maybe even providing TV services, which are how you say, sponsored and sponsored by one of the media companies like Astro or Disney, trying to provide them extra added value services to entice them to stay and spend time and charge the EV at the sites. So these are all the discussions that are happening.
Same discussions you hear in every boardroom around the world. Sin Hin, just your comments quickly on Malaysia from an EV transition point of view. Where would you say Malaysia is as a market, in Asia on this? Obviously, we see China with, half of the world's EVs, I think, are now in China. What about Southeast Asia and Malaysia in particular?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Southeast Asia in general. So EV, I think most of the retailers that we have spoken to recognize the fact that EV is a journey. It's something that you need to embark today, but you're not going to get any ROI over the next 5 to 10 years, right? Some markets are ahead of the game. Some markets are in the middle of it, but most markets are developing their network. I think the biggest issue with EV in countries like Malaysia is about network, simply because of the size of the country compared to, say, a small country like Singapore, right? It's a lot easier to execute and implement and drive that EV adoptions versus country like Malaysia or Thailand or even in Indonesia. So I think in general, the countries and the retailers recognize that EV is at the early stage, but are we there yet, as in like ready to kind of embark and go full steam on EV? I just don't think that we're going to be there for the next 5 years. There's still be a lot of work that needs to be done. But obviously, having said that, we are starting to see oil companies are, even like non-oil companies are starting to promote EV, right? Simply because of the collaboration and the partnership and the incentives that the governments are putting forward to encourage the EV adoptions in this part of the world.
Well, so the direction of travel is clear. It's but it's a journey, as you say, Sin Hin. Well, Sin Hin, you're going to stay with me for our next guest, but I'd just like to thank Argos for joining us. It's great to hear about what BHPetrol are doing in Malaysia. It's obviously one of the key markets that we need to watch in the region. So it's just a pleasure to find out a bit more about what's happening. Some really interesting initiatives that you're working on with the e-wallet. So congratulations for that. And thanks very much for joining us. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sin Hin.
Thank you, Argos.
Have a nice day. Cheers. Bye.
See you again. See you again soon. So that was interesting. And we're going to jump across the seas to the Philippines now, Sin Hin. You've also known Northern Star a long time, haven't you? And obviously you know Juan Miguel Delgado, the Chief Operating Officer, very, very well. So perhaps, Juan Miguel, you could join us.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Sin.
Hey, good to see you, Juan Miguel.
Nice seeing you guys.
So
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Now, we were talking earlier that we've spent some time in the Philippines looking at the market with other players, 7-Eleven, obviously, are very active in the Philippines market. It's very exciting, dynamic market. It's always seemed to me, Juan Miguel.
Yeah, Philippines is a very exciting market. It's highly competitive and great place to be.
Now, we're going to be finding out a little bit about your business story, and I think the best way to kick that off is to play a little video, which just gives, I guess, it's 10 years of amazing change, isn't it? So let's just show everybody who's watching, what's happened, some of the things that have happened across those 10 years.
10 years ago, Northern Star started with just 15 Caltex service stations when Chevron Philippines Incorporated, or CPI, awarded us branded marketer status for La Union, Ilocos Sur, and Abra. Our company continued to move forward and forged on to expand in the retail and commercial and industrial sectors. We strengthened our brand position when in 2015, we became CPI's top branded marketer and was named branded reseller of Pilipinas Shell Petroleum Corporation. As our business grew, we made sure to always give our best. In 2016, Northern Star Energy attained its very first ISO 9001-2008 Quality Management System certification. But it wasn't all business. We also have a shared responsibility in the communities where we operate. In the same year, we launched STS, or Sikap Tulong Sulong. STS is our corporate social responsibility program with activities focused on education, health, environment, and values formation. We were on a roll when in 2017, our wholly owned subsidiary engaged in the land transport of petroleum products, BHPetrol Transport Incorporated began its operations with just 7 brand new trucks. After merely 4 years, BHPetrol now boasts more than 60 trucks in its fleet. We kept going in 2018 and marked a lot of highlights. Northern Star Fuel Facility Solutions Inc., our second subsidiary, was incorporated. NSF specializes in 360-degree fuel facilities management. We also stepped up our efforts to turn our service stations into one-stop shop destinations as part of our convenience retailing strategy. We continue to develop our convenience hub concept by working with a variety of co-locators to provide non-fuel products and services in our service stations. We continue to engage in partnership agreements with companies in different industries: energy, leisure, construction, transport, and many more. We were also honored to be named as one of the finalists in the Rising Star category in the 2018 S&P Global Platts Global Energy Awards, the Oscars of the energy industry. To recognize the efforts and contribution of our retail partners, we also launched the Polaris Awards. In 2018 and 2019, we partnered with Chevron Philippines, AmCham Foundation, and the Department of Education for Caltech's Fuel Your School as part of our STS program. And despite the challenges of the pandemic, which started in 2020, we pushed on and continued to engage, inform, and keep our teams safe by implementing programs and staying connected through our One HR employee engagement activities. Such initiatives allow us to move further into new opportunities and fresh possibilities in doing our business. We ventured into lubricants distribution by partnering with Filipina Shell and signed digital service alliances with DigiPay and Lazada. In the same year, our retail footprint expanded in South Luzon when CPI awarded the Eastern Laguna branded marketer territory to Northern Star. We faced 2021 head-on as we continue to improve the services that we provide. We met with difficult challenges, but we also learned to tap opportunities. And by the end of that year, we now have 71 Caltech service stations in our retail network and widened the client base of our commercial and industrial business. Most of the 9 pioneering employees 10 years ago are still with us today. They have been joined by more than 230 men and women committed to fulfill our mandate. As we celebrate a decade of growth and excellence, we pledge to continue to shine bright in the years to come and be the guiding light in moving life forward.
That was very interesting. Now, I guess Sin Hin, I mean, Northern Star, Rising Star in the Philippines, that's fair, isn't it?
That's definitely very fair. It's definitely the Rising Star in the Philippines. There's no doubt about it.
Now, Juan Miguel, tell us a bit about, obviously, you know, it's an incredible transformation story, isn't it? I mean, let me just in case, for our audience, they don't realize it's, you've gone from, in 10 years, you've gone from 15 fuel stations, and that was a business, and you become an energy company, you know, so it's a major transformation, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, we've achieved quite a bit in the last 10 years, and we're very, very thankful for that. Yeah, we started off with 15 sites, and we expanded on to serving commercial B2B, providing manpower, providing logistics services. So yeah, we achieved quite a bit, and we're very thankful.
And
however,
tell us a bit about your partners. Obviously they've been important to that development.
Yeah, so we've been working with Caltex for the last 10 years for our retail network, and we've also been working with Shell in the Philippines for our B2B, and both have supported us and allowed us to grow. So we're very, very thankful to both brands. Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, again, just giving it a sort of framing this for our conversation. So you started off with the petrol station sites. You built an energy business, and obviously that's, you've seen huge growth in the scale of the business in that time. Very professional business. You have a lot of colleagues working with you now. And your focus increasingly is to look at those store opportunities, so the convenience store opportunities, just thinking about what we were talking about in Malaysia of where the business focus is. You're really focusing on the convenience opportunity as well now, aren't you?
Yeah, so we're taking for our convenience retail department, we're really focusing on integrating non-fuel revenue and expanding that offer in the Philippines. So far we've been predominantly, or actually when we started, we were predominantly a pump and tank operator for our convenience stores, right, of our service stations. We didn't have much of a non-fuel footprint. So that's our focus since has been to expand the non-fuel offer in our convenience retail outlets.
And how are you doing that? And I think maybe we can show one of the ways you're doing that, because you have a huge plethora of partners, don't you? And when I saw this, I immediately thought of EG Group, who I know very well in Blackburn, and based in Blackburn in the UK, global business now.
Yeah, so we basically about 5-6 years ago, we established our convenience hub concept, which basically allows us to focus not more than just being a pump and tank operator in our service stations. And basically it's supposed to offer 8 pillars of convenience. So we've got fuel, we obviously have restrooms, C-stores, quick service restaurants, coffee shops, auto service, pharmacy, and we offer financial services through our service stations. And how we've basically done that is we focused on providing an area within our service stations where we lease out, and by inviting specific partners that fill in each of those pillars, right? And it's worked wonders for us so far in the last 5 years. I mean, we still have a ways to go to expand it, but it's doing well for us so far.
What are your thoughts on that, Sin Hin? Pretty interesting.
I met Juan Miguel. It was very clear to me that number one, he was already embarking on a digital transformation journey, right? And secondly, it was very clear, there's no doubt in my mind, that his focus was all about looking at ways to continue to bring, energy and convenience to the world. And obviously, looking at where we were 5 years ago in the discussion that I had with Juan Miguel and where he is today, I can tell you the growth is enormous. And certainly the fact that, he's moving towards the non-fuel side of business, it literally kind of show you the path that what most of the retailers are thinking at this point in time. The major difference that probably for Northern Star is that they are probably ahead of the game.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the Philippines, obviously, as we know from previous shop talks, is digitally quite developed, isn't it, as a society? In terms of consumers. I mean, does that mean that you have to play and you have to innovate in that space?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Sorry, Sim, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Juan Miguel.
Yeah, so I think the Philippines is there's a lot of technology based. We're adapt to working with tech, and so we've had to. I guess it was a great benefit for us too. It allowed us to shift to offer more products and more services, and improve our own internal processes with the use of technology, right? So that's been a great benefit for us. So as part of our financial offers in our 8 pillars, we tied up with a company called DigiPay that offers bills pay and mobile wallet and money transfers. So we offer those services in all of our service stations to date. We've also tied up and participated in some way in the e-commerce space. Over the last few years, there's been a boom, and so we've tied up with the 2 larger e-commerce platforms in the Philippines, Lazada and Shopee, and we've offered drop-off points and pickup points for some of our service stations located in urbanized centers. So we've people around local communities can drop their packages if they're selling something online, or pick up packages they purchase online. So it's been a great added service for us.
And how does the Philippines differ, Sin Hin, just thinking about, the business opportunity? I mean, how does the Philippines differ from other markets across Asia in this respect?
So Dan, if you have been to Philippines, you realize one thing in common across the board. Doesn't matter where you go. From the point of where you land into the country to the point that you shop and transact, Philippines is all about customer. It's all about consumer. And that is what really differentiates Philippines from, I would say, most of the countries that we have seen in this part of the world. And that probably explains why a lot of the strategy and digital transformation, even the business model and acceleration that they have put in place, are very much driven by the needs of the consumers, right? I mean, and that has always been the key. Look at Northern Star, for example, and you kind of look at, another oil companies like Petron, Uni Oil. Every time when they sit down and have conversation with the executives, the first thing that came into their mind is all about, what can I do for my customers, right? It's not about my business, but it's about my customers. Mm-hmm. And I think they're on the right line of sight, which is focusing on the customers. And that is what really the key differentiator. And that probably explains why, if you kind of look at a lot of digital experience and digital transformation activities that's taking place, Philippines is probably ahead of the game when it comes to consumer engagement or driving exceptional customer experience.
And what does the future look like from a digital perspective? Do you think, Sin Hin, in the market? And of course, Juan Miguel, what in terms of what your future plans are? I mean, what's next?
Yeah, so let me kind of add a couple of two to three observations, right? At least from our end. Then I think today there's a lot of technology players, and there's a lot of digital devices that's out there to help to connect, the different businesses, and also the digital divide between the physical environment and the digital world. Yeah, I think moving forward, there's going to be a need to consolidate as they try to figure out exactly what can they do more for their customers. It's all about looking at ways to unify the data so that they can work through that whole level of personalizations that the customers are looking for. Mm-hmm. Then on top of that, how do you kind of bridge that whole seamless experience, right? It's not just about bringing customers and engage the customers, through the digital devices or the physical connect or stores that you have, but it's how do you kind of bring your brands to your customers as and when they need to. It's all about fulfilling the individual needs. At the end of the day, it's still all about driving the exceptional customer experience. So I think the shift's going to be there. It's going to be more consolidated, more focused. It's going to focus on 3 things. It's going to focus on what can I do more today to drive better enterprise productivity? What can I do more today so that I can amplify my consumer experience? But on top of that, how do I build an ecosystem that is secured, that will allow me to continue to engage and work through the whole journey with my customers, be it in the physical or even in the digital space? I think that's going to be the evolutions that we'll be seeing as the next phase for the Philippines market.
Makes sense. Do you agree, though, Juan Miguel? It's your business.
Yeah, we totally agree. I mean, we're looking, there's a lot of technology products available in the market today to help us expand our footprints, provide what the local markets of where our service stations are located, what they need. And we try to tailor make each service station to cater to the local market, right? And so we're using the available tech out there to do that. And so I think Sin Hin is exactly spot on.
Now, we talked a little bit about, as we agree, you know, the Philippines, very consumer centric, very customer focused market. Let's talk a little bit about energy transition, because obviously, you know, consumer needs are changing and will change more going forward from an energy point of view. Now, obviously, just thinking about some of the opportunities in the Philippines, I know we have a slide which shows some of the, you know, the different vehicles that, you know, where the opportunity sits. E-bikes across Asia, e-trikes across Asia, e-jeepneys. This is a Philippine thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. You know, the Philippines has a ways to go with its EV introduction into the local market. We are definitely behind some of our neighbors and in the implementation. I mean, we have about 550,000 registered cars in the country, private vehicles in the country, and from our last check not too long ago, we probably have less than 500 or 400 EVs rolling around. So I mean, we have a lot of challenges. However, we're as a company, Northern Star, we're looking at this as obviously as a way for the future, right? We know that the current administration is focusing on renewable energy, and so e-mobility fits well into that mass transport strategy that he has and that he will be rolling out. So we're trying to position ourselves to be one of the pioneers in providing a solution, right, and supporting this growth, right? The limiting factors right now, which are pretty obvious I mean, we're learning them and we're seeing them, but it's really the lack of charging facilities across the country. I mean, I think our first fast charging unit was installed last month in July, so we only have one to speak of to date. I think that's about 170 or 180 kilowatt charger. So there's a clear lack of the charging facilities, right? There's still also an uncertainty in the standards and requirements, which I guess, like in any new and growing area, is normal. So those are I think two of the biggest limiting factors that we have right now. But I mean, we're looking at this space. We're looking at providing where we can charging networks to support the rollout of more EV vehicles in the Philippines.
Well, that's very interesting. Obviously, just looking at some of the, you know, the strengths of the Northern Star business, you've had a big focus, haven't you, on critical industries? You know, so shipping, mining. You know, your commercial industrial strategy has been very important to you, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been very important. So we started out as a pure retail company with 15, 17 service stations back in 2012. And today we've shifted where we've grown our service network. So we have over 75 stations as of middle of the year. But it only accounts for about 20% of our business today, and our B2B business is roughly about 80%. So you know, we're really happy with our growth. We've hit 41% overall versus last year. So it's been significantly attributed to our B2B business, while our convenience retail business is about 90% of what it was prior pandemic. So we're starting to see that with the opening of the economy, easing of restrictions, people are coming back. Our sales at the pump are starting to turn. So we're really looking forward to that.
Well, absolutely. We know that's the story. Obviously, lockdowns vary in different markets across the world. Some are tougher than others. And where there's tougher lockdowns, the recovery takes a little bit longer, but it's great to see you're almost there. But just focusing for a minute on the B2B side, I mean, B2B is obviously critical to this business. How are you? I mean, how are your plans developing in terms of fleet services and digital payments, that kind of thing? That must be important to the business.
Oh, it's very important, right? So for fleet service and digital payments, we've tied up with the brands we represent, which is basically Caltex and shell for our retail network. And we support all of their payment programs, all of their fleet cards, and we ensure we expand that and provide and cover as much areas as we can. So far, it's been quite good, the take up, and so we're just going to look to continue to expand that reach.
Big opportunity, Sin Hin.
I think convergence going to be the next big thing. You're going to start to see a huge convergence based on what Wan Miguel had just described between the B2B and the B2C. When you talk about digital transformation, it's no longer just about the needs of the B2C or the B2B, but it's how do you kind of bring that whole, two pieces together and then kind of build an ecosystem to allow you to be successful. And I think we've seen that in Wan Miguel's presentation, which is incredibly awesome, right? I mean, based on what he has, set up for the business and obviously what he's doing in leading the industry, through this whole digital transformation journey. So great work, Wan Miguel.
Thank you, Sin. Thank you, Sin.
Well, Juan Miguel, it's been great for you to join us. I mean, one thing we can say at Shop Talk Live is we're really passionate about finding out about connecting with Asian retailers and finding out, where they are on the innovation journey. I mean, the reason for this is a simple one. Globally, every market is different in terms of what it's good at, and Asia is particularly good at technology and just moves much quicker than many other parts of the world. So it's actually vital to the industry's, I really do believe it's vital to the industry's survival, that we stay joined up globally and, we connect on these things. So we do appreciate you spending the time with us, rising star, or Northern Star, and congratulations for your success. And we look forward to catching up with you next time. And we can see there's going to be considerable developments in the digital space, but also in the convenience store, which is where you're putting a lot of your focus in going forward. So looking forward to that.
Thank you very much for the kind words, and we do look forward to sharing what we can share with you guys and having discussions on what works and what doesn't. So thank you very much.
Very good. And Sin Hin, look, it's a pleasure. We've been looking forward to doing this for a while, haven't we? And we talked through the early days of the pandemic, and it was really useful, for us it helped inform some of our strategies in terms of what we were able to cover in terms of, some of the changes that retailers in Europe needed to put in place in the early days of the pandemic. So you've been a massively important correspondent to us through that time. And it was some time ago now, thank goodness. And it's nice to be in more relaxed circumstances to talk to you on Shop Talk Live. Thanks for co-hosting with me.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thanks for inviting me and to the show, and also great to be a part of the segment.
Very, very good. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to move to our next segment next. So thank you to Juan Miguel and Sin Hin for that. Just really to continue my point, and this as a nice sort of segue into our final segment with Mark today, we just thought we'd pull up a quote from Juan Miguel Delgado in terms of his experience at the recent NACS Convenience Summit Asia. I think, to be fair to NACS, they have been doing a tremendous job in terms of helping bring the industry together in Asia, but also connecting the Asian industry with the rest of the world. And we're going to be talking to Mark about how that's going to happen going forward. But a really nice quote from Juan Miguel, which I know Mark particularly appreciated after his recent experience at the Convenience Summit Asia in Singapore. So thanks to Juan Miguel for that. Well, Mark, we've been talking about you. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Now, obviously, interesting episode looking at Southeast Asia. Asia is an important region for NACS, isn't it?
It definitely is. It's a big region. It is a very diverse region, and a lot of innovation is happening in Asia.
So you're literally just got off a plane from doing a lot of planning. Now everything in Asia, just like other markets, requires a lot of planning, doesn't it? But tell us a little bit about some of the sort of the physical realities of what NACS are doing in the Asian market. So you're just out of the NACS Convenience Summit event in Singapore. Tell us about that.
Yes, you're right. I basically just returned from Singapore, where we had our annual NACS Convenience Summit Asia. It normally always is in March. We had to postpone it this year because of COVID, but we will be back to our March schedule next year. And Singapore was a very interesting market. I mean, it is just an island, but a lot is happening on that island. And you see all the cultural influences from Malay, from Chinese, from British, and how they play into the very different styles of retail there, and how retailers, especially convenience retailers and fuel retailers, cater to very specific target groups. So it's a very diverse city, and it was a very interesting and very successful summit that we had this year. And I'm very much looking forward to being back in Asia for a convenience summit next year in Bangkok.
I think the good thing about what you've done, Mark, is with the NACS has done with the Asia strategy is you've got and you've really sort of put a lot of air miles into doing this in the last few months. You've obviously just done the Singapore event. You've got, I think we can pull up a picture. You've got the CSA in Bangkok, back to the normal timings for CSA in Bangkok, in Thailand. Fantastic hotels as ever with NACS events. You just can't get the rates, can you? I don't know how your negotiators do it, but they do. So that will be tremendous. And as soon as you finish the event, the recent event, Mark, you went straight to Seoul in South Korea to plan CSA for 2024 as well, didn't you?
Yes, that is correct on both things. So we have an amazing events and meetings team, and I don't know either how they get these rates out of those hotels, but I can tell you the rate we negotiated with the Ward of Astoria in Bangkok, you can't get that anywhere on the internet. So very much looking forward to it. It's an amazing venue, and it is an amazing city next year in March. Where we will also have slightly different forms of our store tours. We will go much deeper into what are retailers doing, how are they doing that, what's the strategy behind it, and most important, what can we learn from it and take home with us into our respective countries. And yeah, this year I just after visiting that, I went on to Seoul to prepare for 2024 for our NACS Convenience Summit Asia 2024. We are on a 2-year planning cycle. I scouted the market, met all the retailers, saw what kind of innovation has been done there. Also scouted the hotels that our meetings department selected. And I don't think we have signed the contract yet, but I can tell you the hotel in Seoul will be awesome as well.
I bet it will. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Well, congratulations, Mark, and well done to you and Michael and their relationship partners in the region. I mean, we expect Henry Armour to make this number of flights that he's making. He manages it, but it's amazing that you're keeping up with him, should we say, and doing so much in the Asian market. So congratulations on that. And we look forward to that event. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Well, the other thing, just before we finish, the other thing that I wanted to flag up are 2 Insight Market Focuses events, which are just about almost upon us. We're going back to Oslo on the 6th to 8th of September to look at the latest EV developments in that market. I mean, the interesting thing about Norway right now is that ordinary people are driving EVs. I don't know that someone put it like that to me, and I thought, well, actually, that makes sense. It's not just the elites, if you like, who are commuting in from from large houses. It's everybody in Norway now drives an EV, and that's producing some unique, interesting opportunities and challenges. The other thing to flag up is an event, a store visit focused event in Zurich between the 16th and 18th of November. So lots going on this year, a lot to look forward to in Asia next year. We'll all be at the NACS show. What else is there to say? Thanks very much for joining us.